But actually just having a blanket conversation that says work from home is the best thing since sliced bread is completely false. And I think that the debate is actually raised out of control a little bit.
And I don't believe that there should be a universal solution that's working for everyone. I would much rather be on site where we can focus, we get the job done, rather than my internet died. I'm running late because the delivery is at the door.
What are they going to do differently when they're in the office compared to when they're not? And there's very rarely an answer to that. Is it saying to trust them to be on their own at home all week? You think actually you need to have them in so you can have a level of control of their performance because that's how you want to manage them? How do you stand out? How do you make yourself stand out when you're just a face behind a screen? And I see stuff posted on socials. Oh, if we mandate people returning to work either on a hybrid or full-time basis, people are going to leave. They'll leave and get other jobs. In this climate, will they actually? Sometimes we forget that there aren't 1,000,001 jobs out there for everyone to go for.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. My name is Irina, and welcome to WFM Unfiltered. As usual, we're going to the UK, which I think it's a recurring theme the last couple of episodes, but for a change, I have no clue how to pronounce the name where my guest is coming from, so I'm just gonna hand over to my brilliant guest for today, Adrian. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Very happy to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Irina. Yeah, so for your viewers, I'm Adrian Hawes, and I'm a director and consultant at Select Planning Limited, which is an independent consultancy specialising in resource planning analytics here in the UK. I'm based in East Anglia, a little town called Alton Broad, which is actually on Britain's most easterly point. So if you imagine the map, look at the map down the eastern side. There's a little bit that bulges out. That's where I'm at.
Okay, we need to mention that prior to the recording, I think I managed to already offend you by suggesting that there are no people when you politely correct them. There are plenty of people.
There's plenty of people. There's plenty of strange people, in fact, and I probably one of them.
Well, good to know then. And my knowledge is already corrected, but apologies for that.
Yeah.
So we are about to talk about something that seems to be a very hot topic for the last couple of years, and it is about working from home and whether this is a good idea or not, and when it is a good idea. And recently, I went into a discussion with a grand friend of mine that I really, really respect, Dan. Hey, Dan, if you're listening to us. So now we're going to redo that conversation with Adrian and see how do we feel about that topic and how do we make work from home work, or should we make it work? So what are your thoughts on the topic, Adrian?
I think this is a fascinating conversation to have because I think you have to step back and remember why so many people are working from home. They're working from home because they were forced to. They were forced to through a pandemic when governments decided we had to work from home. Interesting, if you go back before that, working from home was kind of seen as a real innovation in where it was done rarely, particularly here in the UK. It wasn't done very much at all. Mm-hmm. But it was seen where you could do it. It was a fantastic innovation because it gave you huge amounts of flexibility potentially what you could do with your people. And actually, I think most of the benefits were seen as being to the organisation in terms of that operational efficiency to be able to be flexible rather than actually being seen as benefits to the individuals and what they could get from working from home. I think that debate's turned on its head. I think the pandemic has absolutely turned it on its head now. And actually, we talk about working from home as being very much around the benefits to the employee, of which clearly for a number of employees, there are large benefits. Actually, for another subset of employees, quite a large one, there are some big disadvantages as mm-hmm. well. And I think the debate actually often gets unbalanced because as soon as you start saying, oh, well, there are some disadvantages to this, it's not all great, you can very easily be attacked for actually, oh, you're against flexible working then. Or actually you're against neurodiversity and catering for people with situations like that. And actually, no, I'm not. What I'm actually in favour is making sure that we're doing the right things for the right people. But actually just having a blanket conversation that says work from home is the best thing since sliced bread is completely false. And I think that the debate is actually raised out of control a little bit, and we need to bring it back into a more real place and have the debate rather than just having a yes, it's right, no, it's wrong, yes, it's right, no, it's wrong conversation, which happens too much on socials at the moment, in my view.
it's an interesting point, and the thing that personally annoys me is the fact that we need to choose. It's either or. So either you completely hate the work from home, or you're completely for working from home. And I don't believe that should be a universal solution that's working for everyone. And I started working, sorry, not working, but thinking about myself as employee. For me, yes, I love working from home to a certain degree, but there is so much more that I can do once I'm on site. Even it's from building a relationship with the people perspective, putting a face, a voice, a physical presence, so people get to start to trust you, and building that kind of relationship where you understand that you're a team and not just an avatar on a computer that maybe shows up, or maybe the camera isn't working. So let's not turn on the camera because I'm actually in my pajamas right now.
Yep.
And I think what you touched on, and I really want to explore that, is we're talking about advantages for working from home. We never talk about disadvantages. So I want you to talk to me. What can be the disadvantages that you have experienced?
Okay. I think you can always see it through the journey of an employee. I look back when I started work, as you can tell by the grey hair, it's a very long time ago. And it wasn't, call centers weren't a thing then, to be fair. We were kind of administrative centres which had phones and did it all. We'd call it a blended environment now, but it's sort of different. But it kind of works. It works for this purpose. I can remember turning up as a young 18-year-old going into work. And I think to myself now, if I was having to start off my career working from home, I would hate it. I would absolutely hate it. From a number of perspectives. One, I've always believed work should have an element of social connection with it.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think at a young age for people, particularly when they're first getting into work, I think that's really vitally important. I also think it makes you more connected with the organization. Yes, you can connect in a remote world, but I think it's harder. I think it's really tougher. But I think that initial learning piece, I think that is massive. And I'm not necessarily even talking about formal training, classroom training. The ability to be able to sit with people, literally bounce off people. Yeah, I don't quite understand this. What's going on there? Or I've had a tough conversation there. What do you think of that? Laughing it off, eating with people. That whole team thing that you alluded to there. Yeah, I think you to be able to recreate that in a remote environment is incredibly tough, and I think it really takes its toll. And I think you can really see that in certain types of contact centers, particularly where they're dealing with difficult, vulnerable customers. It's interesting here in the UK. Not many, if any, of the ambulance services, for example, have their call handlers working at home. I think that tells you something, that actually there is a realization there that actually that team environment in those difficult circumstances actually counts for a hell of a lot in terms of keeping people on a level playing field, keeping them engaged and positive and able to do their job in difficult circumstances. I wouldn't want to be a contact center agent in those type of environments, sitting in a relatively isolated fashion at home on my own, because you never know what you're going to get on the phone. They're difficult calls. Do you really want to be sat there at the end of a call when you're just dealing with someone having a heart attack on the phone? For example, worst case scenario, that's tough. Now I know that's an extreme. I know that's an extreme thing, and not everybody's dealing with life and death on the phone every day. But actually, there's a whole range of stuff where I think people are left far too isolated from working from home. And yes, I know we're trying to change how team leaders operate and all that kind of stuff to stay more connected. But for me, and I'm old school, I think it's really tough to do that in a fully working from home basis. Now, clearly you can get into hybrid, and you've started the conversation there on hybrid. And I think there is a kind of happy medium for a lot of people. I do think, though, that the hybrid debate is interesting, because I've been to conferences where people talk about hybrids and talk about, our strategy is hybrid. Okay, we have a hybrid strategy. Okay, so what does that mean then? Well, our strategy is that people must come into the office 2 days a week. Why? Why have we chosen 2 days a week? Well, we just kind of have. Well, why? What are they going to do in those 2 days per week that they've got to be in the office for? You're not mandating which days they are. So you've got no guarantee they're going to turn up with their own teammates anyway. So it's kind of random. Let's face it, most people choose the middle of the week. So I'd rather be at home on a Monday and a Friday to extend the weekend, but it's still random. What are they going to do differently when they're in the office compared to when they're not? And there's very, very rarely an answer to that. And so it begs the question. So we're just saying hybrid then because we think working from home could be quite nice for people. So we're happy to let them work from home, but we're not happy to let them work from home all the time. So we're mandating they've got to come into the office. What does that tell me about you as an organisation? Is it saying to me that you don't trust them to be on their own at home all week? You think actually you need to have them in so you can have a level of control of their performance because that's how you want to manage them? Or what are you saying? And I don't think I've not seen any organisation that's been able to articulate to me why they have a hybrid strategy as it is. That's not to say it's wrong that you should have a mixture of those elements, but the why is still missing for me. And I fear that we've kind of lurched into it because we were forced into working from home because of the pandemic. People liked it. We as organisations were reluctant to bring them all back in because we knew there'd be a bit of pushback from the agents because a lot of them quite like it. So we've kind of gone for this halfway house approach because that's kind of feels like a happy compromise without really knowing why. And it's kind of just easier now to let it sit like that, isn't it? Rather than actually really make any other tougher decisions about why you want to do what you might want to do. And it just kind of feels like it's just sort of reached almost a stalemate and a plateau where we're kind of doing what we're doing, not really knowing why, but it feels sort of intuitively maybe the right way for a lot of people. But is it? And I think it's almost. I think a lot of organisations have kind of moved on from it, just going to leave it as they are without really getting under the skin of why it's good or why it might not be. And I personally don't think that's very healthy. And the final thing I'll say about it is that if you're on the outside looking into our world, certainly here in the UK, and I think in a lot of countries, customer service is diabolical at the moment. It's as poor as it's ever been. It's not going anywhere. There's a number of reasons I think for that. But if you're an average punter out on the street looking at contact centres and you have a poor view of the service that contact centres give, and you know that people are working from home, whether it be hybrid or full time, it's very easy to point the finger at the contact centre industry and say, well, actually, one of the reasons you're delivering poor service is because you let people work from home. Now, that's an unfair criticism. But actually, in terms of the perception of our industry, because we're doing so poorly, it's very tough to fight back on that argument.
It adds up to all the other issues.
Absolutely. And so it just sort of snowballs the perception of contact centres in the eyes of the average customer. You work from home, you're not working very hard, you're not delivering great service. I just think we just therefore think contact centres are pretty good and service is terrible. So we're not doing ourselves any favours right now with some of these things. And a lot of that criticism is potentially unfair, but perception's everything in this game, isn't it?
Let me break that conversation because you mentioned such great points, and we can steer that conversation in multiple different directions. But one thing that piqued my interest that you mentioned is that currently we are assuming that everyone prefers working from home. And I'm not that type of person. I prefer to be around people. Do I prefer to be around people every single day from 9 to 5? Absolutely not.
No.
But I prefer that element. And we spoke a little bit that before the recording, especially for days which are jam-packed with meetings, I would much rather be on site where we can focus, we get the job done, rather than my internet died. I'm running late because the delivery is at the door. There is reconstruction. And those are things that are actually happening to me all the time, as to many other people, when you're in an environment that it's not controlled. But the other point is we're not discussing the age and the generations that are working in a contact center environment, because I can certainly understand maybe parents, maybe a little bit elderly people that are working in the contact center would prefer to work from home. I would argue or would be a bit surprised if 18, 19, 20, 22-year-olds would opt in to be locked at their homes all the time without any social interaction. And the reality is that a lot of the people that are working in contact centers are youngsters, are millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, and all
Yeah.
gens. Like we are enforcing ways of working on them because the people that are making those decisions maybe prefer to be working from home. It's that
But
simple.
I think that's a really, really big point. I think a lot of the drive for working from home has come from middle to senior managers, a lot of whom are very happy not to have to come into the office because it saves an awful lot of money on commuting. Particularly if I look at the in the UK here, you know, London allowance, people get paid more in London because it costs an awful lot more to live there. But actually, a lot of people who work in London and take London allowance have historically received that higher pay, but actually that they're using it essentially to fund their commute. And people commute for like 3 hours or so on the train. Do you know what I mean? They'll come down from Manchester, all sorts of places on the train to work in London every day. They're more than happy not to have to work in an office now because they're saving huge amounts of money working from home. So are they going to actually push for a return to the office? Absolutely not. You know, and I think you make a really good point about the different age demographics. Although I think as well, I think there are some older people, but particularly if the people who live on their own,
Mhm.
I personally think work from home isn't actually that great for those sorts of people either.
Yes.
From a mental health perspective, I think that's really bad. You know, and I always smile a little bit when I see people talking about there's the stats around people working from home, and yes, it's going to reduce attrition, it's going to reduce absence, it's going to improve people's mental health, it's going to improve productivity. It's rare you see that genuinely backed up with true data that proves that. Where I do occasionally see data that proves it, I look at it and say that proves it. Where I see data that tries to prove it, I think the people that are producing that data genuinely have a particular point that they want to prove themselves. Not least they've got tech solutions they want to sell into working from home environments. That actually that's what they want to justify why working from home is so great. But no, I mean, youngsters, I think, are a clear pull for that because, like I say, they want social interaction. Most youngsters do. Yes, there are some people who have particular situations, whether it be neurodiversity, stuff like that, where actually working in a big office environment is not great for them and they find it far easier at home. Get that. Let's cater for them because they deserve to be there. Genuine situations that need special situations, special working environments, probably from home where they're much more effective. Other people, I think there's a real mix out there. I think the cost of commuting is a thing. I think that does play into it, and you can't get away from that. But the cost of living these days, costs of fuel, train fares, all that kind of stuff here in the UK is ridiculous. You know, so that does clearly play into people's pockets, and so that is a driver. I think if that wasn't there, I think you'd see far more people wanting to work in offices, to be around people. You know, and I do think as well, you know, if you're a youngster trying to make your way in an organisation now, how do you stand out? How do you make yourself stand out when you're just a face behind a screen? Yeah, I think that's really tough. Again, I go back to my own career. I wouldn't want to be in that situation because I just think it makes it so much more difficult to really stand out and build the relationships that are required to really progress your career, whether that's in the contact center or outside of it. You know, when you're working in a big office area, you have a chance to wander around. Water cooler conversations are often used as an example of it. But that's a fact. You know, you could meet different people from different parts of your organization, get to know them, build a relationship, start to understand what those parts of the organization might do, understand if actually you'd like to progress your career into those kind of places. Whereas now, sat behind a desk as a contact center agent, how do you get that chance to interact more broadly in the organization and actually form a view, even let alone a desire, but form a view of what might be open to you in terms of opportunities and what might be suitable for you within that organization in terms of a shifting in the development of your of your career. I think it's very restricting for people, or it's a risk of being very restricting for people in terms of being able to develop their careers within these organisations. Because let's face it, not many people come into contact centres actually wanting a career, long-term career as a contact centre agent. I think so. There's people who talk about that stuff, but frankly, that's absolute bull. There are the number of people who sit at the end of their, I don't know, their end of their A levels or their university degree with an aspiration to be a contact center agent is approximately zero, because that's not what people aspire to. People aspire to all sorts of other things. People turn up in contact centers because A, they need a job, B, they don't know what they want to do, C, it might just be a stepping stone to do something else. I went to work for an admin center when I was 18. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work for a big corporate organization, a particular one that I went into. I didn't want to stay in admin all my life, but it was a way to get into that organization and find a way that I could pick my path through to actually end up doing something that would be a lot more fulfilling. I genuinely think that's where most contact center agents are now. And so therefore, how do you open their eyes if they're just sitting at home working in a contact center role all day? I think that's really, really hard.
Wow. That's a great perspective, because how do you know what's there if you can't see it, if you're not exposed to it? Because you made a perfect point. When you're in office, you're exposed, whether in conversation, you overhear something, you see different people interacting about different topics. And when you're at home, it's just interaction. Maybe you chat with someone about something, but you keep it very limited.
Yes.
And those type of additional conversations just don't happen. And on top of that, I was constantly wondering why, while I was hearing you speaking, if I'm a new agent, and let's say that my training is on site, and after that on site training with my team lead, they go at their place, I go at my place, and this is how we work. Oh, it's so much more difficult for me to gain momentum and to start being proficient in my job if every single time when I need help, my team lead is nowhere, my senior is nowhere because they're on something else and I can't see them. I cannot go to someone else and I'm just relying on chat. But let's face it, chat is not as effective as its in-person conversations.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, and I come back to what I said earlier on, I think that ability to be able to bounce off colleagues is, whether it's for technical information, whether it's just to keep your morale up in difficult circumstances, I think that's highly underestimated. That team dynamic, when you're having a bad day, able to see a couple of people sitting opposite you, have a laugh with them for a few minutes, face to face, vastly underestimated today. And we think we can replicate it with a few comments on a chat. I'm sorry, just is not the same. Likewise, if it is for learning situations, I can remember when going back in distant past when I started, the number of conversations you just have, look up for your desk and say, I just can't remember what I need to do in this situation. What do I do? And you've got someone literally sitting there who'll give you the answer just like that. You're not typing out a chat. You're not relying on a team manager like you say. It just makes all the difference to not just your skills development, but to your confidence as well. Just having that, knowing that person's there straight away, no problems, bang. I just think you develop at a far faster rate. And I do think we kind of forget that the benefits of that. I just think we're scared to talk about it enough in this world. I think because we think as soon as we start saying, "Oh, actually, this isn't the greatest thing ever," we think the age is going to turn on us. And I see stuff posted on socials. Oh, if we mandate people returning to work either on a hybrid or full time basis, people are going to leave. They'll leave, and they'll go and get other jobs. In this climate, will they actually? Sometimes we forget that actually, it's there aren't 1,000,001 jobs out there for everyone to go for, and sometimes, yes, people will threaten all sorts, but will they move? Okay, will they not be as engaged as they were before? Will they not perform if we make them come back into the office? We make that assumption just because we've sent them home, not because we know it to be true.
That's exactly what is strange for me, is because we're constantly making assumptions that this is what people want. And for the people that actually want working from home, okay, if the circumstances allows for it, go for it. That there's nothing wrong. But for me, when we're talking about flexibility, flexibility for me, the way that I operate as a professional and as an individual, is to be able to communicate with people at least from time to time whenever it's necessary, whenever I want even. So for me, it's a very strange conversation when we're shutting down one of the perspectives and we're saying, okay, we have proven that this is working during COVID and we should stick to it. Why? And you made another great point, is that for people who are neurodivergent, maybe it's better to work from home. For me, during the pandemic, I was alone at my place. And trust me, my mental health was going just like that, like progressively day after day. And I was having such a hard time coping that I was crying to be in an office around people. So I don't think we should be assuming that either or it will be great for people. We should maybe just ask it as a part of our, I don't know, company structure or policy. Would you rather be in the office? Would you rather be at home? Like, how can we make it work for everyone rather than shut either or?
There's a very interesting conversation happening today in the UK. There's an announcement today on the welfare state, the benefits system within the UK, which is apparently the government's going to make some cuts in the welfare state, or announce some potential cuts in the welfare state today. And one of the things that have been kind of building up to this, has been a lot of stuff coming out in the media. One of the things that's being talked about is the massive increase in mental health issues in the country in the last few years. Well, actually, what's also been happening in the last few years? We've been having people working from home a whole lot more than they ever did before. Mental health issues have gone through the roof. Is there direct correlation? I don't know. I'm not saying there is, but there is clearly two things happening there. People are at home on their own, and mental health issues are rising in society. Now, there's a vast array of reasons why that can be the case. But I'm not parking it at the door of working from home, but there will be a number of people for whom it will play a significant part. And I think we should be absolutely open to that. And I do think the flexibility debate is a really challenging one as well. Because there's a number of things on flexibility generally, not just working from home, which are troubling. Because, I was thinking when people say, oh, I want to work flexibly, and that could mean working, but I want to work flexibly. Most people who actually say they want to work flexibly, I'll get shot for this, but hey, what the hell, it's unfiltered, isn't it? Most people who say I want to work flexibly are actually saying, I want to work inflexibly. I want my colleagues to cover the bits of the days that I'm not prepared to work. It's very rare, in my experience. I've seen people come with flexible working requests and say, actually, this is what I can do. No, most people come and say, actually, this is what I can't do, and I'm not prepared to do, I'm not able to do. Can I do it like that? And most organisations today will do everything they can to try and cater for that. But of course, he's picking up the slack. All the people who aren't on flexible working are having to work potentially more flexibly, so that all the people who want to work flexibly can do what they want to do. And I actually think sometimes we get confused with what flexibility really is here, because I think and most people wouldn't like what I'm saying there, but it is the truth. Most people say, oh no, I can't do nights, I can't do weekends, I can't do early mornings, I'm taking my children to school. They are all genuine reasons, don't get me wrong. I absolutely understand why people don't want to be able to, or don't want to work at those particular times. And I've got no problem with us as organisations catering for that and working around those people, because that's how you get a diverse workforce, and it all needs to hang together. But let's not kid ourselves. Those people are saying they want to be flexible. They're saying they want to be inflexible. They're being very, very fixed, most of those people, about when they want to work. And the same is now true with where they want to work. And I think people are saying the same thing. I want to work here. I want to do this. And we kind of run around and cater for it almost regardless. And remember too, if you go back prior to the pandemic, working from home was seen as an innovation to give you flexibility for the organization. That's what it was for, because you could be much more innovative with your shift patterns, whether you're into splits or strangely, you could do all sorts of stuff with shift arrangements. And I went to a number of award gatherings pre-pandemic. I remember award winners where the levels of flexibility they got from having people working from home on particular types of specialist shifts gave them good operational efficiencies, really, really positive for the customer in particular. And they were held in high regard, these organisations. What a fantastic thing you've done. Very innovative, very flexible. shift arrangements. I'd like to know, and I don't know the answer to this, but I suspect the answer is pretty near zero. How many organisations have actually changed their shift arrangements now that people are working from home to give them greater flexibility as an organisation? Very, very few, I suspect, is the answer, and it's all gone the way of the employee. Now, again, intuitively, keeping employees engaged, good thing. But have we better control again? And I pose that as a question because each organisation will be different in terms of where it's gone. But I think we've lost sight of actually, working from home, flexible working, for want of a better phrase. There just should be a quid pro quo in this for both parties here. And I think we've forgotten that actually the organisation should actually get some benefit from allowing what I think is control.
We are starting to forget that it's two sides of the coins that we need to balance, and we're constantly saying, well, we want to work from home. Yeah, but we also want some work to be done because otherwise the cost, it's not going to be justifying the benefit. And the thing is that I think this is the main driver for people losing them, because they feel like if you want people to work from the office, you're basically saying we don't trust them. To be honest, it's much difficult to work from home in certain aspects. For example, every single time when I'm executing a training or implementation, I cannot tell you the difference in working from a training room with people on site and with cameras shut down and everyone getting distracted because they just received the email and they're just naturally distracted. Their focus is going down every single minute. They look around. There are certain noises, there are certain stuff interfering, and something that I'm usually doing in a day, I have to do it the whole week just because the attention span is like, and we're not talking about these things because we're scared that we're going to say we don't trust people. It's not about trust. It is happen. In that kind of uncontrolled environment, it's much easier to just be naturally distracted.
Of course it is. I remember a post on the socials a little while ago. It was a debate around, should a contact centre be able to put a customer on hold if their doorbell goes because they need to collect a parcel? And somebody said absolutely not. They should not go to the door. They should deal with the customer because that's their job. And they got an absolute pile on. And I thought, this is a nonsense. This is an absolute nonsense. If you were at work in an office, you wouldn't pop home to answer the door. Would you only ring doorbell to collect a parcel if the doorbell went? If you're in the employ of your employer at that particular time, then no. I personally, you're talking to a customer. I personally don't think it is appropriate for you to put the customer on hold and say, "Excuse me, I just need to collect a parcel at the door." Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Again, I'm old school. For me, that's entirely wrong. But for me, when I'm in the employment of my employer, whether that's me as a consultant now or before when I worked at a large corporate, when I'm working. That's what I'm doing. I'm not being distracted by the doorbell. I'm not being distracted by having the TV on in the corner. All those kind of things that potentially people can do if they are less than honest about things. I am here to work, and I think that we're letting ourselves get run away with some of these things that people are talking about now in terms of giving employees everything. Ultimately, we have commercial businesses to run here, commercial businesses which have to deliver stakeholder value, to deliver profit, to be able to retain that business as an ongoing concern. We can't turn everything over to the employees. And you get a load of these people who say, "Oh, but actually engaged, positive people will drive that business." Yeah, okay. I buy that to a degree, but you're still a commercial venture and you still have to deliver benefit for your customer. You still have to deliver profit for your shareholders. And if you don't do that, you can't be nice to your people. You won't have any because you won't have a business. So there has to be a balance. You have to balance all those things. And I really fear that we are losing sight of what that balance is. And I think, as I said earlier, I can't remember if it was before we went on air, but because the perception of customer service is so poor at the moment, all these charges can be thrown at us because the customers think we're rubbish. That's the truth of it. And so all these things we're doing, letting the employees do whenever they want, let them work from where they want, all this kind of stuff, they'll throw those as criticism at us because our service offering is so poor. If service was great, well, then it wouldn't matter, would it? Because service is great. And if we're all making money, then everyone's happy. You can do what you want to do with your people. But actually, in the environment we're in today, we can't change the dial on customers. We haven't got to change the dial positively on customer service here in the UK for years. And in essence, it's getting worse. And everything we're doing just seems to make a negative difference to it. So actually, are they the right things to be doing? I'll leave you to answer that because I think it's pretty obvious that they can't be. Something has to fundamentally change to shift the dial on customer service. Now, I'm not saying that's specifically working from home or not, but we have to start looking at things a bit more commercially, a bit more savvy to actually start changing the dial on what we're delivering for customers.
This is a great way to wrap this conversation that I join you in this one. I feel the problem right now is that we're thinking too much as employees and too little as customers. So, and we're all customers. I know myself how annoyed I am when I go somewhere and I see people chatting and looking at their Facebook messengers, and I'm sat there as a customer waiting for them to finish their chat while they're supposed to be working.
Yep.
And actually, I will thank you, Adrian, for this conversation. It was a brilliant, different perspective that I think both of us will get shot down because,
Absolutely.
that's a dangerous topic to.
Why not? Why not?
But I am going to reach out to my friend Dan, and I want to do that on a webinar because I think these are important topics that we need to bring forward. And we're definitely not saying that either or is wrong.
Absolutely
I think
not.
that it's pretty much depending on a bunch of different factors, but I really want to further that conversation. So please tell me you'll join me because I really like that.
Yeah, happy to do that. I don't mind being shot down. We're here to be. We're snipers. I'm a sniper's dream. I don't mind.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation and chat soon.
Great stuff. Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Irina Mateva, founder of Right WFM, where we believe that every business and its people are unique and deserve the right solution to their challenges. If you need support with workforce management, we're just a message away. Get in touch at irina@rightwfm.com or info@rightwfm.com. If you like the content and would like to support the show, please subscribe to WFM Unfiltered on your favorite podcast platform, leave a review, and follow me on LinkedIn. You can also show some love to our great sponsors. For more information about them, check out the episode notes. This is your place for real WFM, so to suggest guests or topics, get in touch at irina@rightwfm.com. See ya!